All right. So today, those are the things that we're going to be talking about. You will hopefully have some questions and things you want to know throughout the day. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. Feel free to add something in the chat. I know I will be trying to monitor the chat, but Mr. Olson also will be helping monitor the chat. So if you have questions in there, put it to everybody and we can respond. If it's something you just want to ask me, just put it in the, just to me, and I'll get that question in the chat as well. So make sure you're asking questions. So again, we've talked about this a little bit, but from my advisory page, everything you're going to find, you're going to go to today's directions and instructions, and you are going to find all the things that we're going to be talking about today and with the assignments and everything that we're going to be doing. So we're going to talk first about Zoom expectations. And I know we've talked about this a lot, but I just want to take a moment and do that right now. First of all, you guys are all doing a great job of being on time. All of a sudden, I didn't have anybody here, and then right at 10:20, I'm sure right as you were getting out of your core class, you guys all popped in here. So I was really happy to see how efficient you guys are at switching from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting, about being on time. We're going to try to make sure as teachers to give you a little bit of a break between classes. So I'm not going to start right away, but I'll often have a question up like we did at the beginning today. Like, hey, what's a word you associate with social studies? Something to get you to start thinking about social studies. Make sure that your microphones are muted. You guys have done a great job with that. Find a quiet place in your house. Almost all of you are doing a wonderful job with that. I know for myself, I can get distracted. I have to close the door here because otherwise there's people out in the hall or there's, other teachers passing by, things like that. And so I have to make sure to keep my door closed. That helps me have this quiet space. Turning on the video. I really appreciate when you guys have your video on. When I'm sharing something like this, it just helps me get feedback on if you're understanding. It helps me know that you're listening, that I'm not just talking to the void there, Pay attention and participate, in the chat, in a private chat, through email, however it is, we want you engaged. I want you participating. You'll see behind me this poster, choose engagement. And I just really think that's important. If we're gonna learn, we need to be engaged. And so I'm gonna do a lot of things to try to engage you in learning, but I want you to do your part there. I want you to pay attention, to participate, and really be focused on what we're doing. Raise your hand and wait to be called on to speak. So if you have a question, just put your hand up on use the hand up icon, raise your hand icon. That helps me in the participant list see who's waiting to talk, or just unmute yourself if there's an appropriate time. Come prepared. Make sure you have your materials. You'll see around me, I've got papers, I've got pencils, I've got all kinds of things around me. My sticky notes, I like all kinds of different places where I am taking notes and kind of keeping track of things. You should have your materials there with you as well. Be respectful and speak loudly and clearly. Like those are all things, if it's your turn to speak, make sure you're taking your chance to speak loudly so that we can all hear you. Are there any questions about those expectations? You guys have really been doing a good job at this. The two I just wanted to highlight are making sure your video's on, if you're comfortable with that, because I really appreciate seeing you, and participate and pay attention. Like I think those are probably the two most important that I would like to see us continue to grow in as we're going this year. I'm going to take 30 seconds here. It'll seem like a long time, but I'm going to take 30 seconds and just give people a chance to either unmute themselves and ask a question or to put something in the chat if you have something.
What's your favorite place that you've traveled to?
That's a great question. We're going to be talking about me here in just a little bit. So can you save that question for then and I will talk about it? because I want to learn about you guys and I want you to learn about me. So I definitely want to talk about the places where I've liked to travel. All right. Then, oh, I've got to get down here. I'm going to go back into those things, and I want to talk about the year a little bit. So social studies this year, every year they give us as social studies teachers different things that we're supposed to teach you guys. So seventh grade last year, Mr. Weibel was supposed to teach about like the Eastern Hemisphere, some of the history, some of the geography. In the sixth grade, you were supposed to learn about the Western Hemisphere, some of the history and some of the geography. So this year in social studies, our focus is really the United States. So we're going to focus in on the United States. We're going to focus on our government, and we're going to focus on and some of our early history of the United States. So I want to start with this quote before I get too far into this. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Can I have a volunteer or two that would maybe unmute themselves and tell us what you think that means? Or what does it mean to you? Again, somebody brave and courageous out there that can say, this is what I think it means, or this is what this quote means to me. Or you can put it in the chat if you prefer.
I guess to me, it means that that like the only people that have gotten things done are these sorts of people, and you can even see it in like our founding fathers. Like Alexander Hamilton was very committed, and yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Kai. I appreciate that. Other people, what do you think it means? Oh, come on, be brave. Oh, I see Patrick put in the chat. I think it means that if you try and stay to your goals enough, you can change the world. I think that's awesome, that you can make change in the world. To me, this is all about social studies. This is all about what social studies is all about. It's about being committed to something and changing the world. I think in science, you learn about how the world operates. I think in math a little bit, you learn about how the world works. I think in language, you learn how we communicate. But in social studies, we really learn how we can change the world. And I'm hoping that's something we can talk about this year is what do we see in the world? What do we see in the world? How do we think we can go about making change and impacting people around us and impacting the world around us? So this year, we're going to talk about current global issues. That's one of the things I love to talk about the most is what's going on in the world today. How is it connected to my life? We'll be just taking days out here and there and saying, hey, today we're just talking about current global issues and really addressing some of the things going on in the world. There are lots of major impactful stories going on right now that we need to discuss, that you guys now are old enough and mature enough to have conversations around. And I look forward to having those conversations with you. We're going to start this year talking about our government and how does it function and what is your role in it. So what is your job in our country now as 13 and 14-year-olds? As you get older, what is your job and duty in the world? Yeah, we're going to be talking about how our government works and what do you do in it. And then we're going to jump to some history. So we're going to be talking about the US Revolution. So when the United States fought for freedom against the British and we became our own country. And we're going to talk about what that was and was it really revolutionary? Did it really make change in the world? We're going to talk about westward expansion, and we're going to really focus in on the stories of people that have been ignored. So, you know, the United States, as it went from 13 states to 50 states, took over a lot of territory. What about people that were already there? The Native Americans, we took a bunch of land from Mexico. What about those people that were already there? So we'll talk about some of those stories as well. We're going to talk about the Civil War, which is the war between states in the United States, so the North versus the South. And we're going to talk about, was it inevitable? Did it have to happen? And did it really solve the problems that they were fighting about? So the Civil War, a lot of it was based on slavery, and did it really solve the problems of slavery at the time? Those are some of the big topics we're going to address this year, but I want to know what's important to you. What are things that, as Miss Kerber and I are doing some planning, and we're coming up, and Mr. Olson's joining us here, and we're starting to think about what we need to teach you guys. What are things that you want to learn about? What are things that we need to address? So in the chat, if you could add things that either you were really interested, add things you're really interested in learning about, or B, things you're wondering if we're going to learn about. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes here to add things in the chat, and then we'll continue on. So take 2 minutes here and add those pieces in the chat.